Call to attention the March 10th regular board meeting, and we have some very special guests tonight. We were excited to be here. The last meeting would be to do the roll call tonight.
Reverend Offer?
Here.
Dr. Ball?
Present.
Ms. Langen?
Here.
Ms. Maddox?
Here.
Mr. Milner?
Here.
Dr. Stanwell?
Here.
And Mr. Zay?
Here.
The board has received a copy of the agenda much in advance of this meeting. Is there a motion at this time to approve the agenda for this evening?
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the agenda for this evening. Everyone in favor, please raise your right hand. Thank you. We certainly want to welcome our visitors tonight. I'm very glad we didn't have this in the administration building because all of you would be out in the lobby. We would never have enough room for that many people. But we're delighted to have you, that you took time to be with us tonight. We're going to ask Reverend Offer to lead us in the invocation and Mrs. Flanagan in the Pledge to Allegiance.
Let us pray. Our Father, we thank you for the opportunity to come here this evening to celebrate the victories of these young people and to be about the business of the school. Father, bless us in our decisions, we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, we will have speakers from the floor, and tonight we only have one person who has indicated they wish to speak to the board, Mrs. Dorothy Carter, the president of the Henry County Education Association.
Thank you. My name is Dorothy Carter. I'm from the Reed Creek District. And tonight I want to speak on behalf of the Henry County Education Association. I want to thank you for the budget that's being presented this year. HCEA agrees with Henry County Public Schools' goals for high-quality instruction, high-quality professionals, safe and orderly learning environment, and innovative and cutting-edge technology, and family and community engagement. We agree with every single budget request for each of these categories. Items we're particularly pleased with are the salary adjustments for teachers on steps 14 through 27, adjustments to the special education paraprofessional salaries at 5%, restoration of coaching stipends, salary adjustments for below market positions, an increase for substitute bus drivers and aides, band stipends, and a plan for the proposed 1.5% salary increase. Since the budget hearing in January, at which Josh Bocock spoke on behalf of HCEA, the Virginia State Legislature amended the governor's budget from 2016 in a positive manner. According to the report, which I received yesterday from the Government Relations Division of the VEA, Henry County will save about $22,168 in payments to VRS because of a decision to sell unclaimed property in the Literary Fund. Because of that sale, $192.9 million was added to the VRS Teachers Retirement Plan. This lowered the VRS rate from 14.5% to 14.06%. In addition, Henry County Public Schools will receive $47,854,967 from the state, based on a projected enrollment of 7,077 students. Of course, our budget is prudently based on 7,000, but it's based on the rate proposed in December, not the current increase rate. At the increase per pupil rate, which will be $6,818 per pupil, the state budget totals $47,726,000. And based on 7,000 students, that's an increase of $1,870,845 from last year. Now that's a significant increase, and we applaud the state for doing this. I will add that we're still below the 2008-2009 per pupil spending by $204 per pupil. So while we're headed in the right direction, the state still has a way to go. Nevertheless, the state budget is good for Henry County, and we're thankful for that provision. There's one item in the budget that the Henry County Public Schools lists as an additional item, a 1.5% salary increase. The state agreed to the increase for 10.5 months so that school divisions can grant 1.5% pay raises effective as late as January 1st, 2016, and still qualify for matching state funds based on their composite index. However, if we don't claim these funds, they are funds from the state that are forever lost. Henry County Public Schools cannot afford to lose those dollars. We understand that this raise is for SOQ positions. We understand that not all of the positions are standard of quality positions. However, it would be better to raise all salaries at the rate of 1.5% in January, as I know has been discussed, rather than lose these funds forever, which total $423,689. While it's right to address steps 14 through 30, please remember that all steps are still behind the salaries since 2 years ago this past fall, when we received 5% raises, only to have it taken out again for VRS, so employees lost and increased taxes. And the next January, we lost 2% more to Social Security. The following year in January, we received 2% raises, but after taxes, it still didn't replace what employees lost. So this 1.5% won't totally replace that loss yet either, but it will help. So please add this amount to the budget, because Henry County Public Schools cannot afford to lose that income, nearly $500,000 from the state.
Thank you, Ms. Carter. One month out of each quarter, we have an evening meeting, and the purpose of that is to give us an opportunity to celebrate with some of our students who have done exceptionally well in their particular area of expertise during the year. And we are very excited tonight to have several groups with us to share in their victories and their good times. And Mrs. Hatchett will let you start.
Good evening, board members. Tonight it's my pleasure to present to you the Magna Vista High School football team, who, as you know, are the Virginia AAA state champions. And we are very excited to honor them tonight with a resolution from the school board. And that resolution reads: the school board of Henry County in regular session on Thursday the 5th of March, 2015, unanimously adopts the following resolution in recognition of the achievement of team members and coaches of the 2014-2015 Warrior football team of Magna Vista High School. Whereas the Magna Vista High School Warrior football team completed an outstanding season by capturing the Virginia High School League Group AA State Final Championship, and whereas the dedication, effort, and cooperation of team members and coaches and the support of Magna Vista school community resulted in athletic excellence, whereas the members of the 2014-2015 Magna Vista Warrior football team have served as examples of the outstanding young people of Henry County and have brought recognition to the entire school division and community. Now therefore be it resolved that the school board of Henry County joins in celebration with the Warrior football team, the Magna Vista High School community, and all citizens of Henry County in recognition of the Virginia High School League State Football Championship. Furthermore, directs that copies of this resolution be forwarded to Mrs. Jameek Black, principal of Magna Vista High School, the coach, and the team members and their parents. And so tonight it's my pleasure to present to you each of the members of the Magna Vista High School football team. a copy of the resolution. Josh Agee, Carlo Albanese, Trayvon Bronson, Caleb Carter, Wesley Childress, Blake Clark, Alex Davies, Richard Evans, Rodarius Bradley, Rob Bragg, Devontae Haley, Bronzell Hairston, Devontae Hairston, Jacob Hairston, Blake Hankin, DeAndre Hayden, Mikkel Hayden, Isaac Herrera, Clyde Hughes, Devin Johnson, Gideon King, DeMarquise Lucas, Shyla McGuire, Jacobus Mitchell, Jonathan Morris, Malik Morris, Tyler Moncarello, Austin Nelson, Tyreek Nolan, Cameron Page, Abraham Pena, Aaron Penn, Cameron Penn, Tamane Penn, Austin Perkins, Cooper Pritchett, James Race, George Rainey, Parker Reed, Trey Red, Kendall Rupert, Xavier Savannah, Brian Scales, Chris Scales, Jason Scales, Marcus Scales, Sharpley Smith Stoll, Kentrell Stockton, McKeever Stockton, Keon Taylor, Brent Thacker, Kyle Trotter, Brian Turner, Corey Turner, Matthew Williams, Tyler Wilkins, Ray Witcher. The Magnificent Warriors are coached by Joe Favero and assistant coaches Monty Bernard, Wesley Childress, Keenan Ellis, Joe Fielder, Brad Hairston, Brandon Hairston, Marcus Hairston, Jalen Hayden, Hugo Hughes, Brandon Johnson, Drew Lowry, Palmer Lowry, Anthony Fred, John Sluter, and Bobby Spencer. Please join me in congratulating the Magnificent Warrior football team.
Can we take this?
Please ask your parents to stand back and leave these people.
Our second recognition this evening is an individual recognition for Jonathan Bishop from Bassett High School. He is a senior and is now a member of the Army All-American Band.
We are honored to recognize Jonathan tonight for this achievement. He's one of very few seniors in our area who have achieved this particular recognition. He was able to serve in the Army All-American Band in January over our winter break. And so we are very proud of him tonight and we congratulate him on his achievement.
Our third recognition this evening is the Henry County Public Schools District Spelling Bee Champions. Mrs. Shreya.
Good evening, Ms. Maddox and members of the board. On February the 10th at Magna High School, we held our annual spelling bee. If you weren't there, you missed quite the exciting event. There were many adults in the audience that were stumped by the questions and spelling, including myself. They were very difficult. So we were impressed. All of our students did an outstanding job. We're so proud of them all. But tonight we want to recognize the runner-up and the champion in each category. So I would like to ask Ms. Maddox and Dr. Cotton to present the trophies with Ms. Durham to our students. Our grade 1 and 2 runner-up is Tyler Powell from Collinsville Primary. Our champion is Kaylin Lawson from Jury Mason. The winning word in the championship was doubt. Doubt. Our grade 3 5 runner-up was Olivia Jones from Rich Acres Elementary. And our champion was Lauren Luther from Drury Mason Elementary. The winning word in this category was pragmatic. We would like to congratulate all 4 students again tonight and also let you know that Lauren will be participating in the regional spelling bee, which will be March 15th in Winston-Salem at the Center for Arts. So we wish you the best of luck in representing Henry County, Lauren. Thank you all.
Our next group of students that are being recognized are from Laurel Park Middle School, from the school career interpretations class. And they did a portfolio presentation. Ms. Durham?
Good evening, Madam Chairman and members of the board. At the December meeting, you all had the pleasure to observe a presentation from the leadership class at the Field Oak College Middle School. The students demonstrated how they were learning the skills that assist them in becoming college and career ready. So tonight, I am pleased to present Mrs. Melissa Pace and her 7th grade students from the Laurel Park Middle School Career Interpretations class. Mrs. Pace and her students are here to share with you what they have learned about workplace training skills through the incorporation of the 4 C's and the career exploration. These skills have helped prepare the students to be college and career ready. At this time, I would like to turn the presentation over to Mrs. Pace and her 7th grade students from Laurel Park Middle School. Please help me welcome Mrs. Pace and her students.
Madam Chairman, members of the school board, and Dr. Tom, career interpretation was offered for the first time this year at Laurel Park. This course allows students to learn how to make decisions, set goals, and plan for their future. They were able to do an in-depth study of the 16 different career clusters and consider the education and training they will need for the careers that they are interested in pursuing. Finally, they compiled a portfolio, samples have been included in your packet, that highlights the career assessments, resumes, cover letters, and references, along with their research on careers. This is a phenomenal group of young people, and they would like to present to you what they have learned.
Thank you for giving us an opportunity to share with you some of the things we learned in career interpretation that we feel will help us as we enter the career world. When we started school, the first thing we talked about was our businesses and mission statement. We took time to look at mission and vision statements of different businesses. We also located and discussed the mission statement for Henry County Public Schools. We then were placed in groups to develop the mission statement for our class, career interpretation. Here are the different mission statements we wrote.
The mission of career interpretation is to provide education and assistance in helping students choose a future profession. The mission of career interpretation is to provide each student with choosing a member of the workforce. The mission of career interpretation is to educate and inspire students about job fit.
We spent time talking about our interests and our basic values. We've learned that our interests and our values are an important part of who we are. Our basic values such as responsibility, achievement, compassion, recognition, courage, and relationships are going to be guides as we make important decisions in our life. Once we finished looking at our interests and our values, we began our tour through Virginia Wizard. In Virginia Wizard, we took assessment tests on our interests, skills, and values, and for many of us, we found that things we were interested in showed up in our assessments as areas for us to consider when looking at our careers. The results of our assessments are included in our portfolios. Careers in each of the 16 career clusters were investigated. We looked at careers that sounded interesting, and we also researched careers we had an interest in. I did research on chemists. They conduct qualitative and quantitative chemical analysis for process control or to find new knowledge, and I have already created a chemical substance that can remove rust.
In between career research, we explored the 8 styles of learning. It was interesting to see the learning styles of each of our classmates. This is our breakdown. 9 of us tested out as naturalistic learners. Would you raise your hand, please? We like to spend time outdoors and working with plants, animals, and other parts of the natural environment. We learn best by observing, collecting, identifying, and organizing patterns. 5 of our classmates are interpersonal learners. Would you raise your hands, please? They like to work alone and pursue interests at their own pace. They learn best through independent study.
I was the only verbal linguistic learner. I like to read, write, and tell stories. I'm good at memorizing names and dates. I learn best by saying, seeing, and hearing words.
Two of us are musically rhythmic learners. We like to sing, hum, and play an instrument. I play several instruments and I play by ear. We learn best through rhythm and melody. Two of our class members are bodily kinesthetic learners. Would you raise your hands, please? They like hands-on activities and being able to move around. They learn best by interacting with people and objects.
I was the only interpersonal learner. I like having lots of friends, talking to people, and joining groups. I'm good at understanding people, leading, and organizing.
We have found that understanding the steps to make a good decision will help us as we begin our journey into the career world. Those steps are define your needs and wants, analyze your resources, identify your options, gather your information, evaluate your options, make a decision, plan how to reach your goals.
We spent time talking about how to prepare for a job interview. We first talked about how to present ourselves when meeting new people. Our interview will make a better impression if we know how to look people in the eye and how to give a nice, firm handshake. References were discussed next. We understand the importance of using people who can speak to our work ethic. We identified 3 people who said they would serve as a reference for us, and we had to gather job titles, addresses, phone numbers, and emails. This information was then keyed in place in their career portfolios.
Then we did some more research. I am interested in web administrators. Web administrators are involved in design and maintenance activities. They make sure websites are running effectively.
Putting together our resumes came next. As 7th graders, we had to really stretch the truth to speak to our work experience. We included things like babysitting, dog walking, and garbage collecting as work experience. Our resumes are not long, but going through the process will help us when we have to complete our first year resume. Our resumes can be included in our portfolios.
Cover letters and their importance were discussed next. We understand the process and have actually made a letter that we included in our portfolios. They are brief, but we know that our letters will be the first impression a potential employer will have on each of us.
Then we did some more career research. I'm interested in business, management, administration, and I researched chief executives. They determine and formulate policies and provide an overall direction for private and public companies and organizations. In filling out job application forms, we understand the importance of a neat handwriting when you are unable to key your responses. We know how to respond to questions concerning your salary and the importance of being able to sign in person.
Then we did some more research. I am interested in interior designers and researched the architecture and construction career cluster. Interior designers plan, design, and furnish interiors of residential, commercial, or industrial buildings. Many specialize in a particular field, style, or phase of interior design.
Last, we discussed job interviews. Although none of us has experienced a job interview, we're going to give you, our school board, a chance to ask us questions that will help us learn how to think before we speak, and hopefully how to give an intelligent and honest answer. No one knows what the future holds. With all the changes in technology, by the time we graduate from college, there will be many new emerging jobs. We have to prepare today to have success tomorrow.
We understand the need to set short-term goals and to work hard to meet those goals. Passing tests in our classes may be our short-term goal, but passing our SOLs at the end of the year is a goal we set when we started 7th grade. Long-term goals are going to take longer to reach, but by setting them, we know what we are aiming for. Long-term goals will help us plan our future. We understand that a career plan is a big job, but we also understand that our goals may change over time. We are keeping an open mind about the future and will continue to look at different careers that will develop as the global economy grows and changes. Again, thank you for allowing us to share what we have learned in career interpretation. Do you have any questions or comments at this time?
I don't have any questions, but let me say it's been a real long time since I was in the 7th grade. And I don't remember at that time ever doing this kind of planning and thinking and organizing that you young ladies and gentlemen have done. And I applaud you and also your teacher and great to see our young people planning at this early age. And I like that last comment that your plans may change. They do. I know from when I was in the 7th grade to where I am now, mine changed a lot of times. So it's good to know that they might change. But again, congratulations. That was great.
And Miss Cloud, you better get yourself ready because there are new tech students coming right along. Our final individual student recognition tonight is the American Legion Oratorical Competition students from Bassett High School.
Madam Chairman, members of the board, locally, we had several students participate in an exercise as preliminary competition for the American Legion Oratorical Competition, which is a statewide and potentially a nationwide competition depending on the American Legions that participate. Mr. Milner can speak definitively to that as he is on one of the American Legion boards that promotes this particular activity. At Bassett High School, Mr. Josh Dean's government class all participated by creating speeches and presenting them in the classroom, and then they had the option to compete on our area level. And tonight we have speakers with us who competed on that level, and they're going to share their presentations with you. Our first speaker is Jordan Ferguson.
On December 9, 2014, the Senate Intelligence Committee released a report on the CIA's use of enhanced interrogation techniques against terror suspects captured after 9/11. This report detailed the confinement and interrogation delivered to 119 prisoners, 26 of whom were held illegally. The question many may ask is if the punishment outlined in the Senate Intelligence Committee's report was overstepping the 8th Amendment of the Constitution. These are questions that all citizens should ask, including you and I, to ensure that our government is one that keeps and enforces the law, and not breaks it. These enhanced interrogation techniques violate the 8th Amendment. The punishments are both cruel and in some cases unusual, and I'm sure that after looking at the law and several examples of the punishment endowed to some of the prisoners, you too will agree. First, let us look at the 8th Amendment itself. The 8th Amendment states, excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. The amendment, like much of the Constitution, was widely vague and included no specific punishments to allow for the changing times and whatever it may bring. The Supreme Court defined cruel and unusual in Furman v. Georgia as any punishment that is degrading to human dignity, inflicted in wholly arbitrary fashion, clearly and totally rejected throughout society, and are less effective than a less severe penalty. Now that we know how cruel and unusual punishment is defined by the court of law, let's examine the report published by the Senate Intelligence Committee. One of the prisoners described in the report was Khalid Muhammad, the self-proclaimed mastermind behind 9/11. He was deprived of sleep for 180 hours, more than a week, and did not produce legitimate information after. Another 5 detainees were rectally fed, meaning that a tube of pureed food was inserted into the rectum of the prisoner and emptied. One example of a meal that would be rectally fed was given to Nishad Cleon. It consisted of hummus, hospital sauce, raisins, and nuts. One prisoner was threatened with a pistol, and another a powder room. Another prisoner died of hypothermia after being left chained to a wall and having to sleep on the concrete floor. The treatment of some detainees was so harsh that some developed psychological problems such as, quote, hallucinations, paranoia, insomnia, and attempts at self-harm and self-mutilation. Now, some may argue that these enhanced interrogation techniques were needed to produce information that could have saved American lives. However, this is not the case. In fact, the very first conclusion the report details is, quote, the CIA's use of its enhanced interrogation techniques were not an effective means of acquiring intelligence or gaining cooperation from detainees. Most of the 39 CIA detainees produced These techniques were not simply cruel and unusual, they are barbaric and appalling. They violate all four principles defined by Furman versus Georgia and throw the Constitution into the trash. And while the brave men and women who administrated these techniques are simply doing their jobs, we as U.S. citizens must also do our job and keep our government in check. Article 6, paragraph 2 is the supremacy clause in the Constitution. It ensures that no one person or one thing, even the U.S. government in all of its facets, is above the Constitution. We should not and cannot let the Eighth Amendment be ignored. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak.
A woman in uniform is shot out of the sky when she is attacked defending her country. Her family mourns her death and receives support from neighbors and friends because the woman fought bravely in her country's honor. Our soldiers that devote their lives to defending our nation's security from physical attacks are the most well-recognized patriots because they are willing to risk their lives to protect our country. A soldier's belief in the constitutional rights we have as Americans is evident in their line of work. Soldiers are not the only people responsible for securing the future of America as we know it. Each of us is given the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness when we become citizens at birth or through an application. Each and every one of us is accountable for the protection and maintenance of the Constitution. With the rights we receive, we are given the responsibility to not memorize the Constitution, but to comprehend every concept within it. We must do our duty as part of this free nation by following the principles and upholding the standards set in the law of the land. It is the obligation of each citizen to make informed decisions and vote for politicians, not because of money, but because they will truly work for the people. Also, we must serve on the jury of our peers to ensure the safety of the innocent and the punishment of the guilty. Without the service to jury duty, we cannot be certain of the fairness of the trial. The other main job we have is to respect the rights of others. Respecting others' rights is the most contested of the three obligations. All of our laws are to protect our rights and prevent others from infringing upon them. The greatest Constitution constructed allows for amendments to adapt to the changing times of the people. The Constitution was clearly amended each time for the protection of the innocent. The right to amend was given to Americans so we could protect and maintain the rules which keep the citizens of this free world so free. The Fifth Amendment to the Constitution outlines the right to avoid self-incrimination, double jeopardy, and eminent domain. Double jeopardy prevents someone from having their life threatened with prison or death more than once for the same crime. The prosecution cannot continue to bother a person after a trial is held, finding a defendant innocent. Eminent domain is also covered in the Fifth Amendment. Eminent domain protects citizens' rights to property. The government is forbidden to take ownership of any personal property without fair payment to the individual in return for it. This amendment is so well known because humans are constantly making mistakes and being punished. Part of what makes America so free is the policy that citizens are innocent until proven guilty instead of the other way around. Americans have every chance to be free because of the Fifth Amendment includes the right to avoid self-incrimination, which allows any innocent defendant to be present in a trial without fear of punishment, because punishment only occurs when there is proof of guilt. Soldiers will always need the most widespread support from our country's citizens because of their direct sacrifice for each and every one of our chances of a life in a free country. Just remember that soldiers can only protect us from outside threats. It is our duty to ensure the stability of the country's foundation by protecting and maintaining the longest-lasting Constitution ever created. Thank you.
And our first speaker for the evening from the competition is Jacob Wilkin. Jacob won the district competition and the regional competition this past Saturday in Salem, and he won scholarship awards at each of those competition levels. He will be representing us at the state competition in Virginia Beach on Friday.
Thank you, Mrs. Hatchett, Mrs. Maddox, and the rest of the board. I would like to our Constitution, they think of an old, dusty piece of paper lying behind a glass pane in the National Archives. They don't really think of what it does for them. They only think of how it's been significant, but they don't really know why it's been significant. In fact, if read aloud, many of them could even distinguish it from one of Shakespeare's sonnets. And after all, they're both thought of being irrelevant and not worth our time. But I don't think it takes us long to realize that's a false notion. In fact, there is no single piece of paper more worthy of our time than the Constitution of the United States. When you consider that it contains our rights, privileges, and founding principles, you know that it's worth your time. And for whatever reason, I doubt you can find those three things just anywhere. So what makes our Constitution so remarkable? Is it because it was the landmark document of the world's epitome of a free nation? Is it because it displays a wonderful assortment of compromises from the greatest thinkers of the age of the Enlightenment? Both are good points, and are constantly mentioned when discussing the importance of the Constitution. But in my opinion, what makes our Constitution so great is undying relevance. Let me remind you of the French Constitution of 1791 and America's own, perhaps its greatest wonder, the Articles of Confederation. Both documents failed. There are many reasons for both, but they all seem to stem from the same core issue. They're dated to their own time. In a manner of speaking, they have no life. They're immovable and unchangeable. But our Constitution isn't like that. Our Constitution has something called the Necessary and Proper Clause, also called the Elastic Clause, the Basket Clause, the Coefficient Clause, and the Sweeping Clause. Our founding fathers didn't do it very well, which allows it to change with the times. If need be, our United States Supreme Court can review the Constitution and interpret it as they see fit. It has no set concrete meaning that cannot be changed throughout the times. And even better, it can always be changed if our legislation so deems it. Think of all the wonderful things that have happened in the United States because of our amendments. We've been granted the right to our 5 basic freedoms: the freedom of speech, the freedom of religion, the freedom of press, the freedom of petition, and the freedom of assembly. Think of our nation without those 5 principles. Why, without those basic freedoms, we would live in a world as depicted in Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451. And ironically enough, were it not for those 5 freedoms given to us in just the First Amendment of the United States, we wouldn't have Fahrenheit 451. The freedom of speech lends authors an artistic license to express themselves in ways only they, the authors, can deem appropriate. Radical works created throughout the centuries in the United States of America, such as To Kill a Mockingbird, The Color Purple, The Scarlet Letter, and even Moby Dick, would not have been created under the existence of a more totalitarian regime as could have been possible in the United States. And perhaps the greatest contestant for the great American novel isn't actually a novel. Perhaps it is the Constitution. It is also worth noting that because of our amendments, we have the right to bear arms, the right to free ourselves from self-incrimination and double jeopardy. We have the right to due process and a speedy trial by jury. But most importantly, our Constitution prevails by offering us citizenship and suffrage, regardless of our race, gender, religion, or anything else. Did the French Constitution of 1791 do that? No, in fact, it did not. Former President John F. Kennedy once said, "The rights of every man are diminished when the rights of one man are threatened." Even today, rights are a hot topic, and they have been for the last few centuries. Thankfully, as I've said before, our country has prevailed by offering us all suffrage and citizenship regardless of race, but that has not always been the case, as been seen by the Civil War and the Civil Rights Movement. As we move forward today, we have the concern of legality of gay marriage. And while no amendment has been ratified, there have been laws enacted to allow our country to be as free and equal as possible. And this upcoming June, the Supreme Court will rule on the constitutionality of states being able to prohibit gay marriage. And in a society where the law is unchangeable, no major movement towards overall equality could be possible, as it now is. So this further evolution of the term equality shows that our Constitution still, to this day, continues to breathe. It's lively and ever-changing, and that's what keeps it relevant. It never dies. Its immortality is separated from the rest of the crowd. It has an undying pulse that makes it the greatest foundation for any nation on earth. And when you truly consider the impact our Constitution has had on the free world, it's mind-blowing. Just think, our country, was the first to break the mold and create freedom for all. And when you consider that, it makes sense that Benjamin Franklin, in his old age and poor health, couldn't hold back tears as he signed what is perhaps the most important document in the Western world. He knew that our Constitution and our country were on to do great things. Abraham Lincoln, who may possibly be the greatest American president, once said, "Our safety, our liberty, depends on preserving the Constitution as our fathers made it inviolate. The people of the United States are the rightful masters of both Congress and the courts, not to overthrow the Constitution, but to overthrow the men who would pervert the Constitution." Lincoln clearly explained another distinctive characteristic of our Constitution, its self-perseverance. The Constitution outlines the ways that each branch of government operates and the restrictions on those respective branches. For instance, the Supreme Court cannot send troops to Iraq if we go to war, and the President can't declare a bill unconstitutional. Those are not their respective jobs. And because of the Constitution, they know that they can be held accountable, both by the people and by each other, for that. You see, under our Constitution, the people have the right to hold their government accountable. In our country, if you feel that your representative isn't doing a satisfactory job, it's simple. It is your civil duty to not re-elect him. And the same goes for your senators or your president. If we, the people of the United States, feel that one of our government officials isn't meeting our standards, we have the right to kick them out. The process of re-election creates an accountability in government that nations with monarchs or dictatorships simply do not have. And this Constitution also allows for a more Jeffersonian ideal known as the revolution. And it's not the kind of revolution that you're more than likely thinking of. Thomas Jefferson was most quoted saying, "Every generation needs a revolution." He didn't mean that we needed to constantly be rebelling and recreating our government, but instead he meant that our government needed to start fresh. We need to get rid of complacent officials and bring in new talent if it is deemed worthy. We need to make sure we're changing which party we favor, because this allows our government to always be breaking new ground and always be effective in serving its people. And it's clear that sometimes we, the people, are ready for a change. It seems that every midterm there's always a change in the political spectrum. In this past midterm election there was another one, and now the Republicans have taken the House. As to whether I agree with that or not is irrelevant, but it has shown that the people sometimes are ready for change. And it brings that back to, we have the Constitution to thank, because we can give our voice to the people. Without it, government accountability would be a mere fantasy. So with all of these fantastic aspects of our Constitution in mind, how do we, the people, protect the document that has brought us such justice? Well, it goes back to what President Lincoln once said. Our job as citizens is to protect our beloved Constitution from those who would twist it to serve their own goals. And if we can manage to protect our Constitution and ourselves from those that would surely try to overthrow it and us, our Constitution will continue to be significant, effective, and most importantly, relevant. Thank you for your time.
We're going to take a 10-minute break now, and you are welcome to stay with us through the duration of our meeting. But if you have other obligations, please feel free to take care of that. We'll call the meeting back to order, and we do not have anything listed under the informational portion of the agenda tonight, so we're moving to the consent agenda. The consent agenda consists of the minutes from the last board meeting, the payment of bills, and the approval of bill trips. Is there any one of these items that you wish to be removed from the consent agenda to be discussed separately? If not, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All in favor, please raise your right hand. All right. Now we go to the action agenda. And the first item is the approval of Regulation KF-R, distribution of information material. Dr. Cox.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. I did want to bring this back for the second reading. We already talked about this at the previous meeting. And as you remember, we have certain guidelines in place for distribution of materials. The main pieces that are different, remember we have a policy related to this, but the regulation is going to talk about different times of the year when materials can be distributed in our elementary schools. We will not be distributing in our middle or high schools. We'll make material available from outside groups, but we will not be sending those home with students as written in this regulation. But what's important for you to know is we're going to align with the report card periods where report cards go home, and that's the time materials can go home, and outside groups need to follow that timeline. We're not going to implement this year. It's going to be implemented July 1st if you approve, but we want to start getting the word out about the new process so that we can let our outside agencies know ahead of time. So I just wanted to offer that up if you have any questions at this time.
Okay, questions or concerns about the second reading of this regulation? If not, is there a motion to approve the regulation?
Madam Chairman, I make a recommendation that we approve the regulation KF-R, distribution of information / materials.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the second reading of regulation RF-R. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Thank you. The second item is the second review of regulation GCVD-R. This is the regulation for absence from work. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the school board. If you remember, at our last board meeting, the board decided to offer up an alternate to the regulation that's listed here. And what we did was we incorporated that wording into the regulation. However, when you look at the rest of the regulation, we had to make some additional changes to ensure that it all tied together. More specifically, when the board made the decision to allow a leave of absence for less than a year, the way the regulation was written was for a full year, which with due dates and timelines, and that didn't fit with the change in the regulation. So what we did, and of course all of those changes have been noted, we had to go back and align the regulation, and I feel like in order to make sure that the board sees this and is okay with these changes that were made, I want to bring it back just to make sure that we're on target. So that's why I want to bring it back for a final approval. Of course, we have the time on this because you decided to implement July 1st. So I wanted to make sure that we have this ready and in place before implementation next year.
So we're going to vote on this tonight.
I would prefer that the board votes on it tonight, unless you would prefer to have it come back for a second reading. Essentially, it's the same thing that you approved at the last meeting. The only difference really is that we had to align the decision throughout the document. Is really what it was. And I shared this with the board a couple of weeks ago, so I hope that was clear.
Are there questions or concerns?
Madam Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I make a motion that we approve the paper as it has been amended and with the following revisions.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the second review of the regulation GCVD-R with changes that had to be made to make it fit into the policy format. All in favor, please raise your hand. Do we have some opposed? Okay. Mr. Scott, we would like to talk about the award of the bid for Phase 3 of renovation at Bassett High School.
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the board, as you know, we continue through renovations of our Bassett High School. We're now into our Phase 3. Bids were solicited for renovations of this area, which includes mechanical wing, and we have alternates for the gymnasium, locker rooms, and so forth. The bids also, of course, included the air conditioning, the lighting upgrades that may be associated with that. And of the two firms responding, Toller, Blair's, Virginia, was the lowest with a base bid of $609,000, and the total bid, which included all the alternates, for $1.8 million. A bid summary is attached for your review, and it's recommended that we award the bid to Toller of Blair's, Virginia, in the amount of up to $609,000 for the base bid and up to $1.2 million for additional alternates pending availability of funding. Now, this $864,408 come out of pay for the base bid, and a portion of alternate 1 would come out of your FY 2014 carry forward forward balance. The rest would come out of our current operation maintenance.
Are there questions for Mr. Scott?
It looks like we have got a trained only 2. How many invitations for bids were sent out?
We actually had 8 contractors show up for the pre-bid meeting. 2 were general contractors, 6 were mechanical, and only 2 responded from the bid. We were shocked as well when it came down time to bid for it. Some of the feedback we received was it was too big of a job. There's a couple of mechanical contractors that showed up for the pre-bid.
Madam Chairman, I move that we proceed with the bids as they have been presented.
Second. It has been moved and seconded to move forward with the bid for the renovation of Bassett High School. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Opposed? The next item is the budget presentation. It's something that has been worked on very hard for the last several months. So, Dr. Clark?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is going to be a little challenging, but we'll try and go through the presentation here so that I can be heard. Okay, I appreciate the opportunity to go head through the budget presentation. As you all know, we were scheduled to present the budget at a meeting later in March, but since this meeting was rescheduled, I felt it was a good opportunity after talking with Mrs. Maddox to go ahead and present my budget recommendation at this time. Just to remind you of some things that we've been discussing throughout this process. As you know, we have our vision and mission, which we continually remind everybody of as we move through this process, because those have to be our priority areas as we're developing the budget, and that has to be kept in mind as the budget is being developed. The other thing I want to remind you of are our strategies that we've listed here in our strategic plan. Those are all important, and you hear us talk about those frequently. When we decided on our budgetary priorities, what you have listed here is the different goal areas aligned with our strategic plan. and we use this as we plan for the budget moving forward. Obviously, high-quality instruction was in the forefront. High-quality professionals guided our decision-making. We're looking at recruiting and retaining high-quality employees, also providing ongoing professional development. We also looked at safe and orderly schools, which continues to be a priority for us moving forward. And we also looked at innovative technology. As you know, we've invested quite a bit in technology over the last several years, and we will continue to do so. And goal 5, family and community engagement, and we all know how important that is, and that's a big part of our strategic plan as well. Some critical questions that we continue to look at as we move forward. With continued budget constraints, will we be able to provide that high-quality educational program for our students? And a part of that is what we'll continue to talk about over the next month or so as we have these conversations with the Board of Supervisors as well as our community. Also, will we be able to renovate and upgrade our school buildings to create those optimal learning environments for our students? We know that we have capital improvement challenges. We know that we do not have a capital improvement budget that we pull from each and every year. The only capital improvement we've really been able to focus on has been based on savings, which is why we're so adamant about saving each year so that we can address those capital improvement projects. And what's important to emphasize is that if we didn't have that savings, we would not have a capital improvement program at all. So it's important to continue to emphasize that, because sometimes when people look at savings from year to year, they're one-time savings and we use them for capital improvement. Sometimes they think that we have more than enough to address our needs, but you can't count on those savings each and every year. Also, how will we retain and recruit those highly qualified staff? And that's a part of this budget recommendation. We talk about salaries, which you've already heard a little bit about this evening already. And then, of course, will our students have the necessary resources they need to be successful? That's really what it comes down to. What we did was we went ahead and pulled together our different goal areas here, and we went through several recommendations that we received from many different stakeholder groups. As you all know, I met with my teacher advisory, my parent advisory, my student advisory. Also, didn't get to meet with my parent advisory because I think we had a lot of snow that impacted them, but also the school board members provided input as well. But what you'll see here is a listing of some items under high quality instruction that were important for us to look at, evaluating our instructional program to determine what our needs are. And I'm in a situation now where I can't see. My internet just ran. Okay, the technology position was the first one that was on the list. And what's important to talk about with the technology position is that's required for SOQ. And so that's certainly a priority. The curriculum specialists, getting them on the same scale, as well as the math specialists, making sure that that we focus on mathematics, which is an area of concern. We also wanted to restore EdRec funds and capital outlay to the schools. We received a request for an additional guidance position to be shared between the middle schools. Under high quality professionals, you all know that we had several requests that made the list. The salary adjustment for teachers is listed here, as well as the special education paraprofessional salary, coaching stipends, and so forth. Several items listed here. When we moved forward, we had some additional requests for safe and orderly learning environment. We requested an additional painter. As we've discussed, we have one painter in Henry County who does an exceptional job. A preventative maintenance position was on that list. We also had some technology needs with the audiovisual technician position, with all the great technologies we have in our classrooms, with our smart boards and so forth, our projectors. The upkeep of those are going to be so important. So what we did from that list, which was a list that came from all of those different meetings, we prioritized. We met with all of the advisory groups, met with the school board to do some rankings, and came up with a list of budgetary priorities. And what's important to know about these priorities is these priorities are in my budget recommendation. Now, I just discussed several things in the last couple of slides. Not all of them are in this budget recommendation because we did our due diligence and we came up with the priorities, and these are the priorities that are included in my budget recommendation. You'll also see that they're linked to each goal so that we're keeping that in the forefront. So in this budget recommendation, we have the additional technology position. We have the curriculum specialists, putting them on the same schedule so that they're all working 12 months. We have the salary adjustment for teachers, steps 14 through 27, which is the most expensive item on this list, but the board very clearly, as board members, you very clearly stated this was a priority, and this was also a priority for other groups. The adjustment for the special education paraprofessionals, that's a 5% increase. We know we're going to have to do more in the future, but that's where we're going to start. We also have the math specialist position. We currently do not have a curriculum person focused on only mathematics, and that would really help us with some of the areas where we're struggling. We have the restoration of ed and rec funds to the schools, as well as the restoration of the capital outlay. We did have to cut some of that this year to balance our budget, and the schools certainly felt that when they were looking at purchasing materials, so that's been restored. We also have salary adjustments for certain below-market positions. The bulk of this will be your bus mechanics and your technology positions. As you remember, those were the positions that were well below market based on our vast study. And also, we are going to increase the pay for substitute bus drivers and aides. We're not showing a cost for that because really it's a savings that comes out of that versus an increased cost, but of course, indirectly, that does impact our budget as far as the amount of savings that we incur. So, as our normal process when we go through the budget, this is just a reminder of the process that we go through. We make sure we align our purchasing procedures with our strategic plan. We ask a lot of questions about purchases that we make from year to year to make sure that we're doing so efficiently. We also analyze our educational programs. Sometimes we run into the situation where we buy programs to fit certain needs, and then when we assess those programs, we find that they're not giving us what we were looking for, so we make adjustments. Sometimes we can purchase programs, thank you, with division-wide funding rather than from the school level, and that's helpful as well. We've also delayed capital improvements due to funding. What we've also done is we've done multi-year projects. Bassett is an example of that. Bassett is a 5-6 year project in order to make that happen. So we have to plan for that at the time. We've delayed equipment purchases. We've also looked at staffing charts to find savings. We make sure we meet SOQ standards as we've discussed. So the adjustments that are made in this budget are listed here, and I've already talked about those in the previous slides so that you know what's included in my budget recommendation. Overall, you'll see on this slide our total expenditures based on the budget that I'm recommending, and that's an overall increase of 1.17%. As you'll see on this slide, and it's also included in your budget recommendation book that we provided for you. This slide will show you that the majority of our expenditures, as no surprise to you, come out of instruction. And the majority of our budget, of course, is for staff, as you know. Some revenue projections. We are basing our budget on 7,000 students. Our hope is that we'll have more than 7,000 students. We do have about 3 or 4 different estimates on what our student enrollment will be. Some of them are more than 7,000, some are below. So we go with a conservative 7,000 student estimate that will help us for budgeting purposes. We also want to ensure that when you compare that number to where we are now, that is a slight decrease because you know there's so much funding that's tied to your enrollment. Now keep in mind that doesn't include your grant funding, some of your grant fundings, but that does include the bulk of our state funds come from student enrollment, as you know. This recommendation that I'm presenting to you this evening does ask for an additional $660,000 from the county, so that's an increase from what we've had in the past. We also have a slight decrease of approximately $15,000 that we're looking at from other funds, but the important number to know is that we are asking for additional funds over level funding, and you know that as you'll note, we provide historical information over the last several years as far as funding from the county. The bulk of our revenue, as you see, comes from the state, a portion from the county, and then federal and state grants, and you have certain requirements you have to follow with those grants. We also have here the revenue summary that's presented to you that includes the additional amount we're asking for from the county if you approve this recommendation. Some additional items I just want to point out here is the first one is with Title I, and I've already talked to board members about this. We have determined that some of our Title I expenditures in the past will not be approved moving forward, so we're having to look at some changes to Title I. And what we've been able to do is look at some of those positions that we can move over to local. So this budget does include some of those changes, and we also were able to handle some of those positions through attrition. But it's just important to know that Title I, as I've shared with you, will be a factor in this budget moving forward. We also have recommended changes to the administrative salary scale. That does not mean salary changes for all the administrators. What that means is we're creating a scale that has a minimum, midpoint, and a max so that we have more flexibility within that system there with assigning salaries. But of course, we'll have to also make sure that we address equity with those salaries, and that will give us more flexibility to do so. And that recommended scale is included in your budget recommendation. I also want to point out that even though we are addressing these teacher salaries as well as some other positions to get them to market or above market, there are other salary adjustments that the VAST study recommended. We can't do them all in 1 year. So obviously we're going to have a multi-year approach where next year, the year after, we're going to have to address some of those other areas. And that's important to note because you'll have people who may say, how come I'm not getting a salary adjustment? Or they may ask, is my job not as important as someone else's job? And that's absolutely not the case. It's just that we have to address this in stages over time, over the next 3 to 4 years, so that we can address those salaries. The problem that we have if we keep doing the percentages across the board, if we keep doing the 2% or 3% across the board, you never get at the equity issues. So we have to start addressing those issues or we'll never get to it. So that's why we're doing this. So if you hear from somebody on this, let them know that we are planning to address their salaries. They're just not in this year's proposal. The other thing I want to mention is the 1.5% increase. You know that we did receive an updated budget that we're still working through. What I recommend that we do is we look at implementing the 1.5% increase for all staff in January because we have a flexible start date to do that up to January 2016. You remember we did that with the 2% increase. And the reason that I recommend that is because it will give us the opportunity to provide the increase to all staff. As Mrs. Carter already mentioned, the proposal only includes SOQ-funded positions, so we'd be in a position where we added 1.5 to some salaries, not all. And the board has expressed to me in the past, and I agree, that we should not do salary increases for some and not all. So I'd recommend that we wait for January, implement that increase for everybody, and then budget for that moving forward. So that's important for us to talk about at this time because I'm sure that question will come up. There are some additional adjustments to the budget that we have not unpacked because of timing, but certainly that will come into play as we move toward our final budget number. This is the calendar of the continued budget events, and this is just a reminder of the meetings that are coming up. We do need to have our budget proposal to the county April 1st, but you'll also see that the county will have some budgetary meetings, and they'll also have opportunities for comments as well. So I would encourage board members and, of course, myself to be involved in those. So this is my recommendation that I wanted to present to you this evening. I'd like to open it up for any questions that you might have, comments, or concerns at this time.
Dr. Cotton, Ms. Carter referred to, I guess, the hot off the presses adjustment from the state and referred to a $1.8 billion increase in state funding. Does that sound right from what you've seen? And if so, how do you anticipate that impacting our budget?
We'll have to verify the numbers, and again, I haven't had time to do that, but that's not in line with what we have at this time. What it looks like, there was a calculation done, but of course, the federal grants aren't tied to your enrollment numbers, so we would have to determine exactly what that increase is. But it's challenging because when you look at your budget number that we're looking at, remember we're looking at 7,000. We ended up with more students than that this past year. So you remember we did the additional appropriation. Our hope would be that, which makes it difficult to compare where we are today to where we were last year this time, because you remember we built a budget based on a different number. But we'll have to check those numbers to verify. But I just received what she was presenting today, so I haven't checked those numbers. But certainly I don't have a number that high in our numbers. But Mrs. Lawson, where do you want to speak to that?
We're still checking them because with the original numbers, Dr. Patton said that comes out from the state. When you see the state proposal, it includes some of your state grants and some of your school-wide programs that are included in there. So you have to back those numbers out to get our true state funding for just the school system that we build our budget on. I have not looked at or talked to Ms. Carter on how she calculated the numbers, so I am going to go back and look at that.
Did you have even a ballpark for us? Are we talking, I mean, she has a number 1.8 million. If that's inaccurate, is half of that possibly? Do you have any kind of an idea? I mean, it sounds like good news, right? The state's going to provide more funding than we had initially anticipated, so that's great. I'm just wondering what kind of range we're looking at and how it will impact our budget, especially given that we're asking for additional funding from the county.
On a report that we received from the VEA, and I haven't finished finalizing the numbers from the state, the report from the VEA said we were getting an increase of about $400,000 for the raises of 1.5%, and it was a reduction in VRS as they did lower the rates slightly, additional amount. I think it was 14.15 is what we built the budget on. And the latest proposal that was approved is 14.06, but it wasn't a large amount of savings for us there because that is based on SOQ funded positions, which we do fund staff at higher levels than the SOQ. So do I have an exact number? Not at this moment, but I can go back and
but it is better. The good news is there, but I will tell you right now, the amount that they're giving us for the 1.5% is not enough to do everybody with a raise. So obviously, we need to figure out what that number is, and I'm not even convinced that that's enough to do it in January. So obviously, we're going to have to find additional funds to do it at that time. But that's the unfortunate thing that happens when it's good news, though. The good news about it is it's not worse than where we are. And there were some slight savings for VRS that was included in that as well. But we'll certainly be able to provide some more information. At least we're moving in the right direction, as we heard earlier this evening.
Thank you.
Mrs. Carter's point is well taken. If you don't use that state money, you lose it. But we've got to make sure that we've got enough little extra money so we can implement that on January 1st. I agree with Dr. Cox.
Are there other questions or concerns or comments?
We will come back at the March meeting for approval, so I thought it was important to get this out now so that we can go ahead and start talking about what our needs are. And well, certainly, as you know, I'm going to be presenting a budget presentation to the Board of Supervisors at their March 24th meeting as well.
So this budget will be presented back to us on the next meeting.
Yeah, that would be our hope. That would be our hope that we can analyze any additions that we need to add by the time we come back together. But again, we're under a tight timeline because we have to get this to the county by April 1st. But certainly we will bring back any adjustments that we need to when we come back in March.
And do you have your all right.
Okay, we have some highlights to share this evening. We'll start off with Chinese feathers listed here. An eagle in the front lobby of Jackson Elementary School started out rather bare, but it didn't stay that way for long. As students were caught in random acts of kindness, they were awarded a feather with their name on it and placed on the eagle. Orchestrated observation. Through a partnership with WDBJ7, the Roanoke Symphony Orchestra broadcast its annual educational concert live from the Berglund Civic Center recently, and students at CCE got a front row seat without ever leaving school. Students enjoyed seeing members of the Roanoke Symphony Youth Orchestra playing alongside the adults and were excited to recognize the familiar faces of two Massillon High School students in the youth orchestra as well. Learn with me. Students at Collinsville Primary were recently treated to a visit from FC Middle School leadership students. FC students created Black History Month books and shared them with students at Collinsville Primary, sharing reading and activity time with small groups during their visit. Cans for the community. Drew Mason Spartan Student Council members provided service during a recent canned food drive to benefit the Salvation Army. The students collected non-perishable food items that were brought to school by individual students, filling several boxes for delivery. Reading is terrific. Kindergarten students at G.W. Carver Elementary participated in a tea party after reading the book The Jolly Postman and discussing the use of good manners, which is part of SOL K.8. Students endorsed the meaning of the word courteous using the Word on the Street series and demonstrated its meaning. Boys escorted girls to their seats to begin the tea party. Students placed napkins in their laps, asked for tea using please and thank you, and practiced polite conversation skills while their teachers acted as waiters. Cans of creation. Students at John Rhodes Smith Elementary School recently collected cans for the canned food drive. With the help of an art teacher, Stacy Moody, and media specialist Robin Williams, students constructed a Lego-type build with their cans. And the center of the build is an eagle, the JRS mascot. The collection of cans around the eagle represent the students, which are building blocks of our school community. Tracking stats. Students at Mount Olivet are excited about reading with the Marksville Mustangs. They hit a home run with the reading program. Students are tracking their reading stats on a board for the school to see. In order to see participation, classes have hats, jerseys, bats, and baseballs with their names, and each month their symbol will move to the next base if they meet their reading goal for that month. Is it magic? Rich Acres Elementary recently hosted a STEM night, during which parents and students in attendance were able to participate in a variety of STEM activities. Students recently, or especially enjoyed, participating in an activity demonstrating that it is possible to stick a skewer coated with petroleum royal jelly all the way through a balloon without causing it to pop. Scratch that. During STEM night at Sandville, 3rd and 4th grade families were able to work with circuits to create moving objects as well as to learn to use Scratch, a program that allows users to create and move their own Lego character. 5th grade families use Lego simple machines, sets to build a dog that wags his tail and moves his eyes. These families were challenged to make changes to the dog to make his eyes move in the same direction and in the opposite direction. Get the scoop. 5th graders at Stanleytown Elementary have started their own newspaper, the Stanleytown Scoop, to improve their writing skills while sharing information with their fellow students and teachers. Each issue includes a history moment, current events, tips, crafts, interviews, surveys, and even jokes, all using various computer apps. As of this date, 2 monthly issues have been published and shared with the school, but the students are hungry for more. It seems 2 scoops are just not enough, and so the newspaper will continue until May. Elements wanted. Arsenic is wanted for poisoning a man, and there's a reward for his capture. Students in Crystal Jackson's 8th grade science class at Epsom Middle are on the lookout for elements. As part of the study on important elements, students have created wanted posters detailing an element symbol, atomic mass, atomic number, uses, and where it is found. Members of the class have enjoyed searching for information about and sharing their knowledge on elements. Creating creatures. To introduce Rick Riordan's novel, The Lightning Thief, students in Mrs. Bird's and Mrs. Heard's classes at Laurel Park were given a list of Greek mythology creatures to recreate. With the end product being innovative designs, creativity was the key, as students could choose to do face-off model to construct their monsters or select an alternate medium. Medusa was students' favorite mythological creature during this activity to build anticipation and make connections with Greek mythology and characters. Osmosis and diffusion. During a study on osmosis and diffusion, Mrs. C's and Mrs. Morse's AP biology students at Bassett High School collaborated to conduct a combined lab to obtain a larger pool of data sets. Lab groups then worked to analyze the data obtained to determine the validity of their hypotheses. Genes for Teens. Bassett High School's Beta Club recently participated in the Genes for Teens National Scholarship Competition Drive, sponsored by Aeropostale. For every 2 pairs of genes collected, the students had the chance at a $10,000 scholarship. The group collected 149 pairs of genes to send to local nonprofit organizations. Genes are the most sought after clothing in homeless shelters because they're so versatile. Construction Zone. As part of our participation in Fast Track 2015, we have worked through the month of February to collect canned food for the Grace Network and the community storehouse. Schools were challenged to create something with their cans. The group with the most innovative construction will be awarded a document camera. Here are some of the constructions that took place. And this completes our highlights for this month. And I have one more item, don't I? Yes, sir. The next item, Madam Chair and board members, is the plan for Make-Up Snow Days. And of course, the last construction project you just saw there was the winning one in CCL. I guess you can figure out what that's supposed to be. I've already shared with board members and with school staff that our plan for Make-Up Days are the following. March 18th is now a full school day, which was already planned previously. April 8th, 9th, and 10th are now school days. Those were previously part of spring break. May 21st was originally a half day. It's now scheduled as a full day. And May 22nd is now a half day and the last day of school. And I've already communicated that information. We're making up a good portion of the days that we, about half of the days that we missed, we're able to use bank time for the other time that we did miss due to snow. And our hope is that the snow is behind us, but I should have said that, because every time I do, I regret it. But we've missed 9 days of school this year due to snow, 16 last year. So obviously, we've had a challenging couple of years. I do want to point out that the calendar that was approved for next year does have built-in professional development days and teacher work days. have winners like this one, and my hope would be that we won't have to touch spring break moving forward. But as you all know, we always have spring break listed as potential for makeup days that we need. And the rest of the items, Madam Chair, are the items that I provide every month. If board members have a question, I'll be glad to answer those at this time.
If there are no questions, are there matters from the board tonight? We have a whole long list of reminders for dates that are coming up. Several of them deal with the budget and the Board of Supervisors budget. And we hope that you will be with Dr. Cochran when he makes that presentation, just to show support if you can. And we also will be honoring our Teacher of the Year on the 19th, I believe, March. And we will also have our Academic Excellence Awards on April the 30th. So these are two big events that we always enjoy. There are several conferences listed, most of them with the State Virginia School Board Association, and of course our local or our regional activity at the new college in May.
Madam Chairman, if I could just backtrack very quickly, a small matter from the board, and this is more just information. First, I'd like to thank Mr. Paul Collins for his editorial asking for more input from our community. It was great tonight seeing the turnout that we had for the awards that were given, but I too would like to just make a public plea for involvement from our constituents about budgetary matters which are going to be before us that are very important both for our board and the community, as well as our staff, and issues in terms of upcoming construction. Again, so I appreciate what Mr. Collins said, and I think I probably share the same sentiment with the rest of you, that we need public input from the people that voted for us and voted for the members of the Board of Supervisors in order to show support for some of the initiatives that we're putting forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a motion to go into closed session? So moved. It's been moved and seconded to go into closed session to discuss appointments and separations of personnel, student matters, legal matters, and all of those in favor of going into executive session, please raise your right hand. So we will go into executive session. I'll entertain a motion to go into regular session.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded to return to regular session. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. You vote.
Whereas the school board of Perry County has convened a closed meeting on this date pursuant to an affirmative recorded vote and in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. And whereas section 2.2-3712.d of the Code of Virginia requires a certification by the school board that such closed meeting is conducted in conformity with Virginia law. Now therefore be it resolved that the school board of Perry County hereby certifies that to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempt from open meeting requirements by Virginia law were discussed, and only such public business matters were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered. Dr. Fox?
Yes.
Ms. Flanagan?
Yes.
Ms. Maddox?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Dr. Stanbaugh?
Yes.
And Mr. Zaire?
Yes.
We have three motions coming out of closed session. Mr. Zaire, I believe, has the first one.
Madam Chairman, I move that student case number, let's see, -15, that the student be expelled from Henry County Public Schools for 365 days without access to alternative services.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Dr. Stanbaum?
I move in student case number 11, EXP-15, the student be long-term suspended from the Henry County School through the first semester of the 2015-2016 school year with permission to attend CCL.
Second.
Those in favor of the motion, please raise your right hand. And Mrs. Miller?
Chairman, motion that the personnel report supplement be approved as presented.
Second.
All in favor of approval of the personnel report and the addendum, please raise your right hand. Thank you.
Madam Chairman, I move we adjourn.
Second. Yes. Is there a second?
Objections.
All right, this meeting is adjourned.